Howdy folks, Don Bruce here. So in our last video we talked about how to get your shapes all named and aligned and connected right, and as well as mentioned how to get the texture to behave correct if you exported your model from Toolbox. Now that we've done that, and that we have a pretty decent model, it's time to move on to lights and windows. So as you can see here, I've got again a DC3 model. And this time, actually, I sent this one back to the shop, or as you call the creator per se, and ended up taking another look. And there were a few things that he did fix, such as the doors missing the holes, as well as some of the other wings, and also he rearranged the lights a little bit. So it doesn't have the same issues that it had in the second video, just in case you are eagle-eyed and care about that stuff. But anyways, I digress. Let's get on with the lights. So, the first thing you're going to want to do with any vehicle is make sure your lights have texture, because Minecraft Transport Simulator will not automatically texture them for you to an extent, and we'll get into that later. But the kicker is that when your lights are off, they'll pretty much look like whatever they look like now. So if you just make a shape with invisible texture, they'll be invisible and look ugly, or if you just don't really care and you make them look black, they'll look black too. I know quite a few people make them, like you see, red, or you can make them white if you're going to be white. I know there's a green one back here. So you can make them sort of a brighter and darker two-tone. Works really well for brake lights and turn signals, which already have sometimes amber coverings or red coverings. But I digress. Whatever you do is up to you. You are the modeler. So to start with, Minecraft Transport Simulator, when it renders lights, requires first and foremost any shape in something called a light to only be a square. Now, it can, well, I guess technically a quadrilateral is the more appropriate term, but most people will see squares or rectangles in that they must have 4 points per shape. So let's take this guy here, which is called landing light. So you have a landing light here, a landing light, as you can see, one right up there, and then one right there. So you're going to have 3 landing lights. So I'm going to go into edit mode, and that's them. As you can see, he's made of a square, he's made of a square, he's made of squares. So that condition has already been satisfied. If you happen to have triangles in your model, you can always click the face select button and then select 2 of them and then go mesh, faces, tries to quads, and that will turn your 2 triangles into a square. I highly recommend you do that, because if you don't, things will look very, very weird and MTS might crash. So anyways, so these lights are already square, so we are done with that. Now, the second thing I want to note, and it's something that a lot of people seem to be getting confused, is MTS looks at all faces inside shapes and objects over here. So you have a landing light, which consists of this and that guy over here and this guy over here. The thing is when MTS looks at these, it says anything that is a 4-pointed shape, anything that's a square or a rectangle or a quadrilateral, is going to be a landing light. So clearly, this is a landing light, but this, no, that's the housing of a landing light. Similarly, that is the housing of the landing light. And if you were to put this into MTS, it would say, okay, that's a flat spot, that's a landing light. Then it would say, that's a flat spot, that's a landing light. Well, then it's going to think that's a flat spot and a landing light. You're going to have a landing light pointing to the sky, and that's a searchlight. So, no, it doesn't belong there. So the first thing we're going to do is select all these little edge pieces here, provided Blender wants to behave itself. And there we go. And I'm just going to hit P and split them off, so they aren't part of the landing light anymore. And then the same thing, I'm going to go over to this guy here, select him, and select him, and select him, and split him off. And the same for the one over here. select him, select him, select him, and him, and there we go. So as you can see, I've got landing light .001, 002, and 003. I'm just going to select those three, find the body model, and Control J. And for some reason, you have to have your mouse over here. I don't know why, but there we go. So it joined them in the body model, because those are part of the body model, because although they technically are parts of the landing light, they're not actually where light shines. And that is the kicker here. So anyways, back to the landing lights. Now, some lights in Minecraft Transport Simulator shine beams out of them. Headlights are one thing, and landing lights, as we have right here, obviously shine beams as well. Now, Transport Simulator is smart enough to look at the faces of your landing lights. Oh, come on. Back into edit mode. And know, okay, I've got a face that points this way, therefore I need to point this way. And why can't I select that face again? Did I do something dumb and put it in the body model? Probably. No, I should be able to select. Yep, I put it in the body model. Alright, let's try that again. Grab that and grab the landing light and join it back in there again and back into edit mode. There we go. Anyway, so it's going to be smart enough to say, okay, light points down. And this holds true for any light with a beam. It will point in the direction of the way you have it angled. So that means if you angle your lights forwards and don't actually put a bend on them, they will go straight forwards. And I find that's not too bad with cars, although technically their light should have a slight downward slant, so if you're using, for say, something for a bus or a bigger vehicle, you should probably take that into account. Of course, this airplane, although it is flat, will sit rotated, and I'm not sure if I can figure out how to rotate Blender. Nah, where's the body model? It'll sit like that on the ground, so obviously the lights have to point down, otherwise they just point to the sky when you're on the ground. So that is something you need to take into consideration. But anyways, once you have these things all split apart, they have to be named a specific way. Much like rotatable parts have a $sign on them, lights must have an and sign on them. So you're going to have and depending on what your light is, depends on what you name it. In this case, these are landing lights, so you're just going to call it landing light. It can be uppercase, lowercase, or a mixture, so I'll just call it landing light. So the first thing is what it is. You can have landing lights, taxi lights, navigation lights, strobe lights, which are the four you see on aircraft. You can have headlights for cars, running lights, which are essentially headlights for cars but without beams. So you can use them for the more fancy things. As you see on the GMC Brigadier, the lights on top are running lights. You can have brake lights, backup lights, turn signal lights that go left, turn signal lights to right, and in V11, once that one gets released, you'll have indicator lights, which are essentially brake lights that don't turn on when the turn signal is on. It's a way for you to combine brake and turn signals into a single area. You'll still need a brake light and a indicator light and a turn signal light in the same spot. But in that case, your brake light, or no, your brake, which is on the indicator, will turn off when the turn signal turns on. I know, it's complicated. Go ask someone else, or go look at a model that's already made, or if all else fails, you can go bother me on the Discord. Happy to explain, because it is slightly confusing. But I digress. So anyways, the first thing you're going to need is the landing light, or the name. The next part, you're going to put an underscore, and you're going to put the color you want this light to be. In this case, I want the landing light to be white, and our colors are in hexadecimal. You can basically the same thing you have if you have a bucket color code that's in hexadecimal or similar, and in our case, white is FF, FF, FF. If you need to know a color, Google is your friend. Anyways, you have a color. Then the next part you're going to get to are the bits that make up how much the lights flash. Now, I'll get to those later when we get to a flashing light, but right now, we don't want the landing lights obviously to flash, and the way to make them not flash is simply do F, 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 5 Fs. So there we go. Now the only difference here, and this is going to depend on what version of Minecraft Transport Simulator you're making your pack for, is if you're making your pack for V10, and I forgot to mention this, if you're making it for V10, this must be uppercase. But if you're making it for V11, and that's what I'm going to structure my tutorials for, is that this can obviously be any case. But you're going to have to add a third parameter here, and it's going to be 3 numbers that are either 1 or a 0. The way it works is you have a 1, 1, 1, or 1, 0, 1, or 0, 1, 0. And the way it works is these tell Minecraft Transport Simulator how to render the light. The first one tells it to have that little shiny flare on it, and obviously I want that for this light, so I'm going to give it a 1. The second one tells it if you want to render the color inside of the light, for lack of a better word. It basically fills in the whole square with whatever color you choose as sort of a beam turn on color, and I'm just going to leave that as a 1 for this case. And the third one is, do you want to render that glass pane on the top? Now, some modelers have expressed to me they don't like it, so a lot of them will be using 1, 1, 0 to get the flare, the color, and not the glass plane. Sometimes you may not even want the flare if you just want to do something simple. Then in that case it would be a 0, 1, 0. Whatever you do is up to you. So anyways, you copy this, and with the way Blender exports things, you're going to want to copy it down to this second mesh thing here. It gets picky that way. And so there you go. Now you've got a landing light. So while we're at it, I'm going to go take the landing light. Same thing. You have a taxi light. That really won't be any different. Just you call it taxi light. And so if you go edit, you grab him, grab that bit. Come on. Grab that bit. Make sure I didn't grab the light this time. Yep. Split that off. He doesn't belong. He doesn't belong. That guy doesn't belong. And that guy doesn't belong. So split him off. And yep, we've got one more up here. And goodness gracious, it's going to be hard to get to. Really mounted that inside the airplane, he did. And that doesn't belong. And dear. I get to fight with Blender's camera today. Let's try that. There we go. Got it. Alright. So I should have 1. Yep, I should have 2. And I should have 3. There we go. So I'm just going to take the landing light name, put him down here. And that shouldn't be landing. That should be taxi. And same thing. I want it to render exactly the same way as a landing light. So there we are. Taxi light, taxi light. And I'm going to take these 3 and combine them to the body model. Like so. So there we go. Now I have landing and taxi lights. So the next things would be the strobe lights. And now I guess I'll go after the strobe white. So if I grab the strobe white, you can see you have actually quite a lot of them. You've got 1 on each wingtip, 1 on the bottom, 1 on the top, and 1 on the back. So anyways, now with strobe lights, I can foresee that you would actually want the light to shine on all sides. If you just had it shine on the top, big whoop on that. Strobe lights are little bulbs. You can see them from any side, especially if you look at photographs. So in this case, I don't have to split off anything, with maybe the exception if there's a shape under here, but you won't see that, so I won't be picky. I'll leave that up to someone else's discretion. But I digress. So you got your strobe lights, and so you're going to, of course, have to name them something similar. So they'll be strobe light something. I'll just copy this because I'm lazy. And it's not taxi, it's strobe light. Again, we want them to be white, so it's F, 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 white. hexadecimal. And of course we also want them to have the glass and everything else, but we don't want them to be on all the time, because that's not how strobe lights work. They blink for maybe a couple milliseconds and then they turn off. And here's where that second parameter comes in. And rather than try and explain binary and hexadecimal to you, I will simply come over here to the internet and show you. So the way that parameter works is every tick, MTS looks to see if the light should be on or if the light should be off, and it turns it on or off respectively. And that parameter, interestingly enough, is exactly the same as 20 bits, or ones or zeros. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So 20. And if I convert that, you get F, 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 F. And this basically says every tick, and this is of course 20 ticks equals 1 second, the light will be on, 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 and on and on. So it will always stay on. However, for our flashing lights and the strobes, personally, I just want them to be on for 2 ticks. So they blink, blink, blink real quick like. So in this case, I'm going to change these to zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 zeros. So you're on for 2 ticks, off for 18 ticks, rinse and repeat. That gets you the hex result of C0000. So I'm going to take that, put it back here into Blender, and replace the FFFFF with C0000. And you can do this for any tick rate what you want. Personally, for me, for turn signals, I like to leave them on half the time and off the time. I've known some people who want them to do a quick blink, 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 blink. It really depends on whatever you want to do. And in fact, if you want to make a light that looks like it's revolving, you could simply have one side be on for the first 2 ticks, the second side be on for the second 2 ticks, and so on and so forth until you have the last side on for the last 2 ticks, and then it goes back to the first side. So it's a really flexible system, and I leave it to y'all to imagine something. Anyway, so that's a strobe light. Heck, where'd that run off to? Taxi light, taxi light. Come on. Ah, there it is. Strobe light. So you've got your strobe light, and let's see, you got a green one there. Nav green flashing. Okay, so that's a navigation light. Navigation light. And again, we want it to flash at the same amount. And I'm going to want it to be green, RGB, so that's OOFFOO, hexadecimal. And rename that. Then you have nav red flashing, which is the same, except red is FF00 for hexadecimal. That goes there. And am I missing any other lights? Strobe light, taxi light, landing light, navigation light. No, not really. You've got that, navigation light. I'm really surprised though. I thought the navigation lights didn't flash. But that's what the modeler said. It said flashing, so flashing I shall make it. And that, as far as I can tell, looks like everything. So that's basically all your lights. It's pretty simple to do. There's not too much involved. I mean, of course, you have to texture everything, but you just make your model knowing you're going to put lights on it, and it's really not that hard to put them in. And that's basically it. So, for now, this is Don Bruce, and I'll catch you in the next video where we start putting windows in vehicles. Unless you just use custom textures for Windows, in which case you can go ahead and skip to video 5 where I wrap things up. But anyways, this has been Don Bruce, signing off.